The 5 main reasons are, actually, do you really want to hear these? They made me squirm. Was I making these mistakes? Anyway, Christianity, first of all, number 1, did not seem to make much difference in my parents' lives. In their marriage, they were actually no different to my friends' parents who did not believe in God. It wasn't that they argued. They assumed that everyone sort of argues. I mean, no one's perfect. It was that they didn't embody the Christian ethos of grace, forgiveness, kindness, and didn't seem to nurture their relationship like they promised when they stood at the altar, to love and to cherish. So what was the point of Christianity if it failed to make any positive difference to make the marriage rich? I want those things in my life, they said, but Christianity didn't seem to provide them, at least as I looked at my parents. So despite its promises, it wasn't attractive to me. I think Jack and I worried about this a bit, so here's an example. We decided to go away overnight each wedding anniversary for a romantic night away. It was actually mostly about us. We took it in turns to organise everything and surprise each other. But we also knew that we wanted the kids to notice and we wanted to role model this idea of nurturing our relationship for our kids, so they realised we weren't just their parents, but we were a couple, so that when they became a couple, they would also know how to nurture their relationship. And also, the second thing that worried kids was that their parents didn't seem to take Christianity as a measure in life. For example, their work or what they thought was important, making money, talking to friends, etc. They talked about love, but they didn't really show much, especially that sacrificial love that Christianity is about. And they'd seemed to be just as hooked into work and money, working day and night and busy as everybody else. And they rarely, in fact, showed that inspirational, sacrificial love that they talked about, that Christianity talked about, like actually spending time, not just money, to help those in need. Their parents had failed Colossians 3:13. And I've noticed that my kids are still watching me. Like, I value compassionate, Jesus-like engagement with everyone I meet. In the last year, two of my kids have noticed that I've kind of blown people off. And they brought it up with me. And of course, on each occasion I was tired, but a reason is not an excuse. And on both occasions I followed up and found the person and apologised. But here's the point. Kids are always watching. Do you walk the talk or not? Does Christianity actually make a difference to your life, or are you just talking about it? The second main reason that kids said that put them off faith was that their parents locked them behind intellectual closed gates. They weren't supposed to read about other viewpoints, or if they did, or they heard them at school or heard it from friends, they weren't supposed to discuss them with an open mind. The Christian point of view was just rammed down their throats. So then, of course, when they went to university or whatever, they were like lambs to the slaughter during discussions about faith or life, etc. They were not equipped to embody a love of truth and grace that John 1:14 talks about. And they felt like they were made of glass and everybody had a hammer. And as a scientist who's at the cutting edge of science, and as someone who deals with suffering again at the cutting edge, at the coalface, Christianity is more like a lighthouse in a rough sea. It can stand all of those challenges. So it's just not fair to kids to let them go to university without equipping them with open discussion, encouraging them to read and think for themselves so that they are strong and resilient and they know that Christianity is a very strong argument. Closed gates doesn't work. We've got to open the gates and be with our kids, encouraging them to think and talk for themselves. The same applies to sex. In a recent study in Christianity Today, said that 16-year-olds who leave church, one of the big reasons is that sex is never discussed. The kids say, look, we're up to various things at this age, it's just the way it is. It's very frustrating and annoying that the church doesn't talk about it. We have to open the gates and talk about it. The third reason is the lack of teamwork in Christianity. They say, my parents didn't seek out those wonderfully rich Christian communities of young Christians that others get exposed to, that just kept us within their own restricted and often boring confines. So we missed out on those experiences that others just made such a difference to their lives, and also to those other strong role models that seem to have such an effect in other people's lives. You know, they were envious of them. Now, I was aware of this, that many Christian parents fall into this category. I was a bit worried that maybe I did. Church groups can be pretty boring, especially if it's just grinding on. And I might have continued, except almost, I think 2 weeks in a row, we heard Christian testimonies on a Sunday night at church, maybe separated by a couple of weeks. Both of them said that it was beach mission, the Scripture Union outreach to the beach, where kids, families go and play games and have fun, and just fabulous role models, etc. Anyway, I heard all this. These two people both said it was beach mission that made the difference in their life, got them over the line, if you like, saw Christianity in its richest form. And but for beach mission, they may not be Christians. Well, the next morning at 9:01, I rang the organisation. I said, I want to volunteer. My whole family and I, we want to come. I will be happy to clean the floors, carry the slop buckets, clean the toilets. I'll go anywhere you want. I want my kids exposed to this experience. So we went, actually about 20 years in a row, and our kids, two of our kids say to this day that was a powerful force in them becoming Christians, attending church as adults. The fourth reason was kids said, look, my parents spent almost all of their time with church people, various meetings and Bible studies and church and such like. They seem to have very few non-church friends. And indeed, they appeared to be actually uncomfortable around such people. And they didn't seem to know how to engage with them. It made me feel like they live in a Christian sect, inside a castle, behind a big wall. And it wasn't the real world. And worse, it made me feel that to become a Christian, I'd have to give up all of my non-church friends and live in that castle, not live my life to the full, sharing it with everyone around me. Whereas my friends' parents had all sorts of guests, and they would talk and listen about anything. And they just seemed to have rich friendships of different people with different points of view. Jackie and I think, were aware of this. And so when we first got married, we had a visitor's book. And we set ourselves the goal of 50-50 guests. We would write it all down. And every year or so, we'd check to see how we were going. And we wanted 50% to be our church friends and 50% to be non-Christian friends, so that we would make sure that we did spend time with church friends and didn't shrink that, but also we would spend time with non-Christians and we wouldn't shrink that. And I was at a birthday party a few years ago. 150 people attended this 50th birthday party of a strong Christian, and 147 were from the church. A frightening thought. We have to be intentional about this and not make our kids think that they are joining a sect, that they're going to live behind a castle wall and have to dump all of their non-Christian friends or not make non-Christian friends into the future. The fifth and final of these reasons was, they would say, my father was harsh and judgmental, which made it hard for them to sense the idea of a fatherly God, whose nature was loving and forgiving, who hugged the prodigal son instead of shouting at him and berating him and wagging his finger at him. They say they saw other dads who were nice, but then kept running into the model of their own father, who lacked the compassion of God, discussed in Psalm 103. And I know that in my job as a doctor, I too can get tired and grumpy, but I stopped using that as an excuse, and I started apologising more, and I'd go out of my way to tell my kids I loved them, regardless of anything. Actually, I found some tricky ways to do that. My boys in particular and I always talk about sport, and sometimes I would be talking about the cricket or football and what was going to happen on the weekend, and I said, oh, mate, by the way, I've got just one other thing. What's that, Dad? I really love you, mate. Nothing you can do can stop me loving you more than anything else in the world. But I learned to do that, and a lot of kids didn't get that, and honestly it made them hard to embrace God as the Father that He is. So here are those 5 reasons that are summarised, and I'd invite you to look at them and ask, well, how you're doing with each of them. Being weak at them is one thing, and me too, I know I've failed a lot of them, but being a hypocrite, like, it's a worse thing, which gives the kids almost no chance. Hypocrisy. In the next video, what can Christian parents do?